The ultimatum hit like a freight train. Marry in 60 days or lose everything. Sarah stood frozen in her father's study, the leather bound will trembling in her hands. Her father's voice, gruff, unyielding, echoed in her memory. No marriage, no inheritance. You'll get nothing. The words stung, sharp as the whiskey he'd sipped while signing the document. She was 27, a librarian in Willow Creek, a speck of a town in upstate New York, where everyone knew your business before you did. The scent of old books and polished wood clung to her, but now it mixed with the sour tang of panic. Outside, the morning was crisp, the kind of autumn dawn that painted the sky in pinks and golds. Sarah stepped onto the porch, her boots scuffing the weathered planks. Her breath hitched, a soft sigh escaping as she gripped her coffee mug, its warmth grounding her. Across the street, Emma's truck rumbled into view, a battered red pickup that roared like it had a personal vendetta against silence. Emma, 28, a firefighter with a smile that could melt glaciers, climbed out, her short brown hair catching the light. She was all muscle and heart, her flannel shirt rolled up to her elbows, revealing forearms scarred from years of battling blazes. "Hey," Emma called, her voice low, carrying that easy confidence Sarah envied. She crossed the lawn in long strides, her work boots crunching leaves. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Sarah forced a smile, but it cracked. "More like my dad's ghost, telling me I'm screwed." She handed Emma the will, her fingers brushing Emma's, electric, unintentional. Emma's eyes scanned the page, narrowing. 60 days? To marry? What is this, the 1800s? Sarah laughed, bitter and sharp, the sound swallowed by the morning quiet. It's his last power play. No husband, no money. The house, the savings, gone. She didn't mention the part that burned her throat. Her father's disapproval of her choices. His refusal to acknowledge who she loved. Emma's jaw tightened and Sarah felt the air shift, heavy with unspoken things. They'd been circling each other for months, late-night talks at the fire station, stolen glances over library counters, the way Emma's hand lingered when passing Sarah a beer. But Sarah was cautious, her heart a vault, locked tight after years of small-town whispers. Emma, though, she was fire, all in or nothing, and Sarah felt the heat every time their eyes met. "Want me to burn it?" Emma teased, holding the will like it was kindling. Sarah snorted, but her chest ached. She wanted to say more, to spill the mess of fear and want inside her, but the words stuck. The porch creaked as Emma leaned closer, her breath warm against Sarah's cheek. "You don't have to do this alone, you know." Sarah's pulse raced, a drumbeat in her ears. The morning light caught Emma's eyes. Hazel, flecked with gold, full of something Sarah was terrified to name. 60 days. She could lose everything, or maybe, just maybe, she could choose something real. The day unfolded in fragments. Sarah shelved books at the library, the musty scent of pages grounding her, but her mind was elsewhere. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown. She overheard whispers from patrons. Her dad always was a hard-ass. And her cheeks burned. By afternoon she was restless, her fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the counter. She needed air, needed Emma. She found her at the fire station, polishing a truck, her movements steady but her face tense. The station smelled of diesel and metal, the air humming with the distant crackle of a radio. "You didn't text back," Emma said, not looking up. Her voice was quiet, but it carried an edge like she was bracing for a fight. "I was processing," Sarah mumbled, leaning against the truck. Her flannel felt too tight, her skin too warm. "This isn't just about money, Em. It's him, still controlling me from the grave." Emma set the rag down, her hands smudged with grease. She stepped closer, close enough that Sarah could smell the faint cedar of her soap. "Then don't let him. You're not his pawn." Her voice was fierce, but her eyes were soft, searching. Sarah's throat tightened, and for a moment she let herself imagine it. Choosing Emma, choosing them, consequences be damned. But the weight of the town pressed in. Willow Creek wasn't kind to women like them. Sarah had seen the looks, heard the slurs disguised as jokes. Her father's will wasn't just about money. It was a cage built to keep her in line. She exhaled, shaky, and Emma's hand found hers, a quiet anchor in the storm. "I need time," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the station. Emma nodded, but her grip tightened, like she was holding on to something slipping away. The clock was ticking, and Sarah felt it in her bones. 60 days to decide who she'd be, and who she'd choose to stand beside. The fire station's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows on the concrete floor. Sarah lingered by the truck, her fingers still tingling from Emma's touch. The air was thick with the scent of oil and sweat, and the distant wail of a siren cut through the evening calm. Emma leaned against the truck, her hazel eyes locked on Sarah, searching for something she wasn't saying. "You're running from this, aren't you?" Emma's voice was low, almost a growl, but it cracked with something raw. Sarah's stomach twisted. "I'm not running," she lied, her voice barely above a whisper. She crossed her arms, her nails digging into her palms. The truth was heavier. She was terrified. Not just of losing the inheritance, her childhood home, the only tie to her mom's memory, but of what choosing Emma would mean. Willow Creek's eyes were everywhere, judging, whispering. She could already hear the gossip at the diner. "Sarah's one of those now." Emma stepped closer, her boots scuffing the floor. "Then stop acting like it. You've got 60 days, Sarah. That's not nothing. But you're looking at me like I'm the problem." Her voice softened, but the hurt was there, sharp as a blade. Sarah wanted to reach out, to smooth the crease between Emma's brows, but her hands stayed locked at her sides. "I don't know what I'm doing," Sarah admitted, her breath hitching. The words felt like a confession, raw and jagged. "This town, it's all I've ever known. And my dad," she trailed off, the memory of his voice cutting through. "You'll ruin yourself, Sarah. You'll ruin us." She'd spent years trying to please him, hiding who she was, but the will was his final jab, forcing her to choose between safety and truth. Emma's hand brushed her arm, a fleeting warmth. "You're not him. You don't have to live his version of your life." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. A flicker of fear, like she was bracing for Sarah to pull away. Again. The station's radio crackled. A call about a car accident on Route 17. Emma's shoulders tensed, her firefighter instincts kicking in. "I gotta go," she said, grabbing her gear. But before she turned, she leaned in, her lips brushing Sarah's ear. "Figure out what you want, Sarah. I'll be here. But I won't wait forever." The words landed like a punch, and then she was gone, the station door slamming behind her. Sarah stood alone, the hum of the lights deafening in the silence. She drove home through the dusk, the town blurring past, neon diner signs, the old church steeple, the weight of expectation in every familiar corner. Her house smelled of lavender and dust, her mom's old candles still lining the shelves. She sank onto the couch, the will crumpled in her lap, and let the tears come. They were hot, messy, fueled by anger and longing. 60 days. It felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat all at once. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of birds outside her window, their chirps sharp against the quiet. She dragged herself to the library, her eyes puffy, her chest tight. The routine of shelving books usually calmed her, but today it felt suffocating. Mrs. Callahan, the head librarian, gave her a knowing look. "You okay, hon? You look like you've been wrestling demons." Sarah forced a smile, stacking books with more force than necessary. "Just family stuff." Mrs. Callahan nodded, her silver hair catching the light, but her eyes lingered, like she could see the storm brewing inside Sarah. The older woman had always been kind, slipping Sarah extra hours when money was tight, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to confess. Not yet. By noon, the library was quiet, save for the soft rustle of pages and the occasional cough from a patron. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from Emma. "You good? Last night was a lot." Sarah stared at the screen, her thumb hovering. She wanted to type everything, her fear, her want. The way Emma's voice made her feel like she could be brave. But all she managed was, "I'm trying. Talk later." Emma's reply was instant. "Always." A single word, but it carried weight like a promise. Sarah tucked her phone away, her heart a tangle of hope and dread. She spent the afternoon lost in thought, the will's deadline looming like a storm cloud. She imagined marrying someone else, a faceless man, a safe choice, someone her father would have approved of. The thought made her skin crawl, like betraying herself all over again. That evening, she found herself at the fire station again, drawn to Emma like a moth to flame. The air was cooler now, the scent of wood smoke drifting from somewhere nearby. Emma was outside, hosing down the truck, her movements sharp and focused. Water glistened on her arms, catching the fading light. She looked up and her face softened. "You're back." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "I don't know what I'm doing, Em. But I know I don't want to lose you." The words slipped out, raw and unfiltered, and Emma froze, the hose dripping in her hand. For a moment they just stood there, the world narrowing to the space between them. The sound of water hitting pavement, the faint crackle of leaves in the wind, the unspoken pull that had always been there. Emma dropped the hose and closed the distance, her hand cupping Sarah's cheek. "Then don't," she whispered, her voice rough with emotion. Sarah's breath caught, and for the first time in days she felt like she could breathe. The moment hung between them, fragile as a spider's web. Emma's hand lingered on Sarah's cheek, her thumb brushing softly against her skin, warm despite the October chill. The fire station's floodlights buzzed, casting long shadows across the pavement. The air smelled of damp asphalt and wood smoke, a reminder of the bonfires burning on the edge of town. Sarah's heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against her ribs, and she leaned into Emma's touch, chasing the courage she didn't feel. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted, her voice barely audible over the drip of the hose. Emma's eyes softened, but she didn't pull away. "I know," she said, her breath visible in the cool air. "But you're here. That's a start." Her voice was steady like an anchor, but Sarah saw the flicker of doubt in her gaze. Emma was scared too, scared of being the choice Sarah might not make. They stood there, caught in the push and pull of want and fear, until the station's alarm blared, a harsh wail that shattered the moment. Emma cursed under her breath, her hand dropping. "Duty calls," she said, flashing a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. She grabbed her gear, her movements swift, practiced, and Sarah watched her go, the ache in her chest spreading like wildfire. Back home, Sarah paced the living room, the hardwood creaking under her boots. The will sat on the coffee table, its edges curling like a taunt. She could still hear her father's voice, cold and commanding. "Marry right, Sarah, or you're out." Right meant a man, a life he could stomach. Not Emma. Never Emma. The thought made her stomach churn, while rising in her throat. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through old texts. Emma's late-night jokes, her "you got this" after Sarah's long shifts, the photo of them at the county fair, laughing with cotton candy stuck to their fingers. Sarah's eyes stung, and she tossed the phone onto the couch. The next day, Willow Creek buzzed with its usual rhythm. Kids on bikes, the diner's neon sign flickering, the low hum of gossip. Sarah overheard it at the library. "She's got her dad's money riding on this. Bet she'll pick some city guy." The words were knives, small but sharp, and she buried herself in work, organizing shelves until her hands ached. Mrs. Callahan caught her eye, offering a gentle smile. "You don't owe them an explanation, Sarah. Live your truth." Sarah nodded, but the words felt hollow. Her truth was a tightrope, and she was one misstep from falling. That evening, she drove to the lake on the edge of town, needing space to think. The water was still, reflecting the bruised purple of the sky. She sat on the hood of her car, the metal cold against her jeans, and let the silence settle. The air smelled of pine and earth, and she closed her eyes, imagining a life where she didn't have to choose, where she could love Emma openly, without losing everything else. Her phone buzzed. "Emma again. Missed you at the station. You okay?" Sarah's fingers hovered, then typed, "Can we talk?" "At the lake." The reply was instant. "On my way." Emma arrived in her truck, the engine's rumble cutting through the quiet. She climbed onto the hood beside Sarah, her shoulder brushing hers. The contact was small but electric, grounding Sarah in a way nothing else could. "So," Emma said, her voice soft but teasing, "you gonna keep running or are we doing this?" Sarah laughed, a shaky sound that broke the tension. "I want to do this," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "But it's not just the money, Em. It's this town, my dad's shadow, the way people look at us. I'm not as brave as you." Emma's hand found hers, their fingers lacing together. "You think I'm not scared? I've been out since I was 19, Sarah. I've heard the slurs, felt the stares. But I'd rather live honest than hide." Her voice cracked and Sarah realized Emma wasn't just fighting for them. She was fighting for herself, too. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, its surface rippling with a breeze. Sarah's chest tightened, a mix of fear and something fiercer, hope maybe. "What if I choose you?" she whispered. "What if I lose everything else?" Emma's grip tightened, her callous fingers steady. "Then we build something new. Together." The words were a promise, raw and unpolished, and Sarah felt them settle deep in her bones. For the first time, the deadline felt less like a cage and more like a chance. They sat there until the air grew colder, the stars sharp above them. Sarah leaned her head on Emma's shoulder, the scent of cedar and smoke wrapping around her like a blanket. The world felt quieter, the weight of 60 days a little lighter. But the clock was still ticking, and Sarah knew the hardest choices were yet to come. The lake's quiet lingered in Sarah's mind as she drove home, Emma's words echoing. "We build something new." The night air was sharp, carrying the scent of frost and pine through her open window. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as the reality of her choice loomed. Choosing Emma meant defying her father's will, risking her home, her stability, everything she'd clung to since her mom died. But the thought of a life without Emma, of marrying some stranger to appease a dead man's rules, felt like a betrayal of her own heart. At the library the next morning, the fluorescent lights buzzed like a headache. Sarah shelved books mechanically, the rhythm usually soothing but now grating. The will sat in her bag, a constant weight. Mrs. Callahan noticed, her sharp eyes catching Sarah's distracted glances. "You're carrying something heavy, aren't you?" she said, her voice soft but firm. Sarah hesitated, then nodded, the truth too big to swallow. "My dad's will. I have to marry in 60 days or I lose everything." Mrs. Callahan's brow furrowed, but she didn't pry. Instead, she slid a cup of tea across the counter, the steam curling like a question. "You don't have to follow his rules, Sarah. Not if they break you." The words were simple, but they hit hard, stirring the same fire Emma's presence sparked. Sarah sipped the tea, its chamomile warmth grounding her, and wondered if she could be brave enough to rewrite her story. That afternoon, Emma texted, "Meet me at the diner? Need some grease to survive this shift." Sarah smiled, the knot in her chest loosening. The diner was a Willow Creek staple, all chrome and red vinyl, smelling of coffee and fried onions. When Sarah walked in, the bell above the door jingled, and Emma looked up from a corner booth, her firefighter jacket slung over the seat. Her smile was tired but real, and Sarah's heart stuttered. "You look like you haven't slept," Sarah said, sliding into the booth. Emma shrugged, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "Long night. Structure fire out on Mill Road. Everyone's fine, but," she trailed off, her eyes distant. Sarah reached across the table, her hand covering Emma's. The contact was small but heavy like a vow. "You're okay, though?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above the diner's hum. Clinking plates, low chatter, the sizzle of the grill. Emma's gaze softened. "Yeah, better now." She turned her hand, lacing their fingers together, and Sarah felt the stares. Old man Jenkins at the counter glanced over, his mouth tightening. A waitress paused, her tray wobbling. Sarah's cheeks burned, but Emma didn't flinch, her grip steady. "Let him look," she murmured, her voice low and fierce. "I'm not hiding." Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted that courage, wanted to wear her truth like Emma did. But the weight of the town pressed in. She pulled her hand back just an inch and Emma's face flickered, hurt then guarded. "I'm trying," Sarah whispered, hating how small she sounded. "I know," Emma said, but her voice was quieter now, like she was bracing for another letdown. They ate in near silence, the clatter of forks louder than their words. Sarah's burger tasted like ash, the deadline ticking in her mind. 58 days left. She could feel Emma slipping, not because she wanted to, but because Sarah's fear was pushing her away. That night Sarah couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, the creak of the pipes like a ghost's whisper. She pulled out her mom's old photo album, the leather cover worn soft. Pictures of her parents' wedding stared back. Her mom radiant, her dad stoic. Sarah traced her mom's smile, wishing she could ask her what to do. Her mom had loved fiercely, openly, despite her dad's coldness. "Would you be proud of me?" Sarah thought, her eyes stinging. The next day she found Emma at the fire station, polishing gear in the garage. The air smelled of wax and metal, the hum of a radio in the background. Emma looked up, her expression guarded. "You're making a habit of this," she said, but her tone was softer, hopeful. "I don't want to lose you," Sarah blurted, her voice cracking. The words hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Emma set the gear down, her hands steady but her eyes searching. "Then stop pulling away," she said, stepping closer. "I'm all in, Sarah. But I need to know you are too." Sarah's breath hitched, the scent of Emma's cedar soap grounding her. She wanted to close the distance, to kiss her and let the world fall away, but the will's shadow loomed. "What if I can't do it?" she whispered. "What if I'm not enough?" Emma's hand found hers, calloused and warm. "You are. You just have to believe it." The words were a lifeline and Sarah clung to them, her heart racing as the station's lights buzzed above. The clock was ticking, but for the first time she felt like she might outrun it. The fire station's garage was a cocoon of sound. Clanging tools, the faint crackle of the radio, the steady rhythm of Emma's breathing as she stood close. Sarah's hand trembled in hers, the warmth of Emma's callous fingers anchoring her to the moment. The air smelled of polish and gasoline, sharp and grounding. Sarah wanted to stay here, frozen in this fragile hope, but the will's deadline pulsed like a heartbeat. 57 days left. Emma's eyes held hers, steady but searching. "You don't have to have all the answers now," she said, her voice low, like she was coaxing a scared animal. "But you gotta stop running from yourself." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to be brave, to choose Emma without hesitation, but the weight of Willow Creek, its whispers, its judgment, clung to her like damp clothes. They parted with a quiet promise to meet later, Emma's shift pulling her away. Sarah drove home, the town blurring past. The diner's neon glow, the church's steeple stabbing the sky. Her house smelled of lavender and memory, her mom's candles flickering on the mantel. She sank onto the couch, the will staring at her from the coffee table. She could still hear her father's voice, cold and final. "Marry right or you're nothing." The words carved into her, but Emma's voice was louder now, a counterpoint. "You are enough." The next morning Sarah woke to rain, a soft patter against the windows. The library was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of wet paper and coffee. Mrs. Callahan was there, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes kind but piercing. "You look like you're carrying the world, Sarah," she said, sliding a stack of books across the counter. Sarah managed a half smile, but the truth spilled out. "It's the will. And Emma." Mrs. Callahan's face softened, no judgment in her gaze. "Love's never easy, hon. Especially not here. But it's worth fighting for." She paused, her hand stilling on a book. "I was in love once too. Didn't end how I wanted, but I don't regret a second of it." Sarah's chest ached, the older woman's words a mirror to her own fears. She wanted to ask more, but a patron interrupted, and the moment slipped away. That afternoon, Sarah found herself at the town's edge, where the woods met the lake. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet pine and earth. She walked the trail, her boots sinking into mud, needing space to think. Her phone buzzed. "Emma again. Diner tonight?" I'm buying. Sarah smiled, typing back. Only if there's pie. The diner was warm, alive with the clatter of plates and the low hum of conversation. Emma was already there, her firefighter jacket slung over the booth, her hair damp from the rain. She looked up, her smile soft but cautious. You're late, she teased, but her eyes were searching, like she was waiting for Sarah to bolt. They ordered burgers, fries, a slice of cherry pie to share. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting a harsh glow, but Emma's presence softened it. Sarah reached for her hand, tentative, and Emma's fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. The stares came, Jenkins again, his scowl sharp. A group of teens whispering, but Sarah didn't pull away this time. Not entirely. I'm trying, she said, her voice low. But it's hard, Em. This town, it's like it's waiting for me to fail. Emma's thumb brushed her knuckles, a small gesture that felt like everything. Let him wait, she said, her voice fierce. You're not failing. You're fighting. They lingered over the pie, the tart sweetness cutting through the tension. Emma told stories, fires she'd fought, pranks at the station, and Sarah laughed, the sound surprising her. For a moment the deadline faded, and it was just them, two women stealing time in a world that didn't always want them. But when they left, the night air was cold, and Sarah felt the clock ticking again. Back home she couldn't sleep. The house creaked, the wind rattling the windows. She pulled out her mom's photo album again, flipping to a picture of her parents dancing at a town festival, her mom's laugh frozen in time. Sarah traced the image, her chest tight. Would you fight for this? She asked silently. The answer felt like a yes, but it came with a cost she wasn't sure she could pay. The next day, Sarah found Emma at the station, her gear strewn across the floor. The air smelled of smoke and leather, a reminder of Emma's world, dangerous, fearless. I'm in, Sarah said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Emma froze, her eyes wide. You mean it? Sarah nodded, her heart racing. I don't know how to do this, but I want to try. With you. Emma's smile was like sunlight, breaking through the clouds, and for the first time in days, Sarah felt like she could breathe. Sarah's words hung in the air, raw and trembling, like a match struck in the dark. The fire station's garage smelled of smoke and polish, the hum of a distant radio filling the silence. Emma's smile faltered, then grew, her hazel eyes catching the light. You're sure? She asked, her voice rough with hope. Sarah nodded, her heart hammering, the weight of her decision settling like a stone. 56 days left, and she just leapt off a cliff. Emma crossed the space between them, her boots scuffing the concrete. She pulled Sarah into a hug, her arms strong and warm, smelling of cedar and faintly of ash. Sarah melted into it, her cheek pressed against Emma's shoulder, the world narrowing to the steady beat of Emma's heart. We'll figure it out, Emma murmured, her breath warm against Sarah's ear. Together. But the moment broke with the screech of the station's alarm. Emma cursed, pulling back, her face torn between duty and desire. I'll find you later, she promised, grabbing her gear and sprinting toward the truck. Sarah watched her go, the red lights flashing like a warning. Alone in the garage, she felt the weight of her choice. Exhilarating, terrifying, real. The next day, Willow Creek was gray, the sky heavy with clouds. Sarah worked at the library, her hands moving on autopilot, shelving books while her mind raced. The scent of old pages and coffee grounded her, but the whispers were louder now. She's with that firefighter girl, isn't she? Her dad's probably rolling in his grave. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she kept her head down, her resolve hardening. She wasn't hiding anymore. Mrs. Callahan caught her in the break room, pouring tea with steady hands. You're glowing, hon, she said, her eyes twinkling. Something shifted. Sarah blushed, stirring her tea. I told Emma I'm in. For real. Mrs. Callahan's smile was warm, but her voice was serious. That's brave, Sarah. But it won't be easy. This town's got a long memory. Sarah nodded, the truth settling like a weight. She spent the day distracted, her phone buzzing with Emma's texts. Miss you. Dinner at my place. Sarah typed back. Only if you cook. The thought of Emma's tiny apartment, cluttered with books and firefighting gear, smelling of coffee and leather, made her smile. That evening Emma's place was warm, the air thick with the scent of garlic and tomatoes. She'd made pasta, the sauce bubbling on the stove, and Sarah laughed at the sight of her in an apron, flour dusted on her cheek. "You're a mess," Sarah teased, brushing it off with her thumb. Emma grinned, catching her hand. "Your mess, though." The words were light, but they landed heavy and Sarah's breath caught. They ate on the couch, plates balanced on their knees, the TV humming in the background. Emma's apartment was a haven, worn furniture, a cracked mug on the table, a photo of her with her fire crew pinned to the fridge. Sarah felt safe here, like she could breathe without the town's eyes on her. But when Emma leaned in, her lips brushing Sarah's, the kiss was soft but urgent, like they were stealing time. Sarah pulled back, her heart racing. "What if I mess this up?" she whispered. "You won't," Emma said, her voice fierce. "We're in this." She kissed her again, deeper, and Sarah let herself fall into it, the world fading to the taste of wine on Emma's lips and the soft creak of the couch. But the next morning reality crashed in. Sarah woke to a voicemail from her father's lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, his voice clipped. "We need to discuss the will. Meet me tomorrow." Her stomach dropped. She hadn't told anyone but Emma and Mrs. Callahan, but Willow Creek had a way of sniffing out secrets. At the library the stares were sharper, the whispers bolder. "She's throwing it all away for that girl." Sarah found Emma at the station, her hands busy with a hose, her face tense. "Hargrove called," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He knows something." Emma set the hose down, her jaw tight. "Let him. You're not backing down, are you?" Sarah shook her head, but fear gnawed at her. The lawyer's office was a cold place, all mahogany and leather, and Hargrove's eyes were sharper than her father's. The meeting was brutal. Hargrove laid out the terms. "Marry a man, keep the inheritance. Choose otherwise, lose it all." "Your father was clear," he said, his voice like gravel. "This is about legacy." Sarah's hands clenched, her nails biting her palms. "It's about control," she snapped, surprising herself. She left the office trembling, the air outside sharp with the scent of rain. Emma was waiting at the library, leaning against her truck. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. Sarah shook her head, tears spilling. "I'm losing everything." Emma pulled her close, her arms a shield. "Not everything," she whispered. "You've got me." The rain started as Sarah leaned into Emma's embrace, the drops cold against her skin, mingling with the salt of her tears. The library parking lot was empty, the air thick with the scent of wet asphalt and pine. Emma's truck was a solid presence behind them, its red paint dulled by the storm. "You're enough," Emma whispered, her voice cutting through the patter of rain. Sarah clung to her, the warmth of Emma's flannel grounding her against the chaos in her chest. 55 days left, and the world felt like it was closing in. Back home, Sarah's house was a cocoon of quiet, the creak of the floorboards loud in the stillness. She lit one of her mom's candles, the lavender scent curling through the air, and stared at the will on the coffee table. Its words were a cage, but Emma's voice was a key. "You've got me." She wanted to believe it, but the lawyer's words echoed, legacy, duty, expectations. Her father's shadow loomed, and Sarah felt small, like the girl who'd hidden her truth to keep his approval. The next morning the town buzzed with gossip. At the diner Sarah caught fragments. "She's defying her dad's will," and her stomach churned. She poured coffee for regulars, her hands steady but her heart racing. Old man Jenkins glared from his usual stool, his voice low but cutting. "You're throwing away your future, girl." Sarah's smile faltered, but she didn't respond, the clink of her coffee pot louder than her silence. Emma found her at lunch, sliding into the diner's booth with a tired grin. "Rough morning?" she asked, her hazel eyes scanning Sarah's face. Sarah nodded, pushing a plate of fries toward her. "They're talking. Everyone knows." Emma's hand found hers under the table, a quiet defiance. Toki. They don't get to decide your life. But the weight of the town's judgment pressed harder. That afternoon, Sarah found a note slipped under the library's door. Think about your family's name. No signature, but it reeked of Willow Creek's small-mindedness. She crumpled it, her hands shaking, and texted Emma. Need you. Library. Now. Emma arrived in minutes, her boots leaving muddy prints on the floor. The library was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of books and rain. What happened? Emma asked, her voice low. Sarah handed her the note, her throat tight. They're not gonna stop, Em. They'll make this hell. Emma's jaw clenched, her fingers crumpling the paper further. Then we fight back. Together. They sat among the stacks, the world muffled by rows of books. Emma's hand rested on Sarah's knee, her touch steady. You don't have to do this alone, she said, her voice soft but fierce. I'm here, Sarah. All in. Sarah's eyes stung and she leaned into Emma, their foreheads touching. The moment felt sacred, like a vow whispered in the quiet. But the next day brought a new blow. Hargrove called again, his voice colder. There's interest in the estate. If you don't comply, it'll be sold. Sarah's heart sank. Her childhood home, the porch where her mom taught her to braid flowers, the kitchen where they baked cookies, could be gone. She drove to the lake, needing its stillness. The water was gray, rippling under the wind, and the air smelled of damp earth. She sat on a rock, her boots sinking into the mud, and let the tears come. Emma found her there, her truck's rumble of familiar comfort. She didn't say anything, just sat beside Sarah, her shoulder brushing hers. The silence was heavy but warm, filled with the unspoken. I can't lose the house, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. It's all I have of her. Emma's arm slid around her, pulling her close. You've got more than that. You've got us. They stayed until dusk, the sky bruising purple. Sarah felt the deadline like a pulse. 54 days left. Back home, she pulled out her mom's photo album again, flipping to a picture of her parents at the lake. Her mom's laugh bright even in black and white. Would you fight? Sarah asked silently. The answer was clearer now, fueled by Emma's presence, her unwavering belief. The next morning, Sarah woke with a fire in her chest. She drove to the fire station, the air crisp with the scent of frost. Emma was there, polishing a helmet, her movements steady but her eyes tired. I'm done running, Sarah said, her voice firm. I choose you. I choose us. Emma's face lit up, and she pulled Sarah into a kiss, fierce and unapologetic. The world fading to the taste of coffee and the hum of the station. The clock was ticking, but Sarah was ready to fight. Sarah's declaration hung in the fire station's air, bold and trembling, like a flag planted in unsteady ground. Emma's kiss was a spark, igniting something fierce in Sarah's chest. The station smelled of wax and smoke, the hum of the radio a distant pulse. Emma pulled back, her hazel eyes blazing with pride and relief. You mean it, she said, not a question but a confirmation. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding, the weight of her choice both terrifying and freeing. 53 days left and she'd chosen Emma, chosen them. The next morning Willow Creek was alive with its usual rhythm. Kids shouting, trucks rumbling, the diner's neon sign buzzing. But the whispers were sharper now, cutting through the library's quiet. She's really doing it. Her dad would have hated this. Sarah shelved books with steady hands, the scent of paper and coffee grounding her. Mrs. Callahan caught her eye, offering a nod that felt like approval. You're braver than you know, she said, her voice soft but sure. Sarah clung to that as she faced the day. Hargrove's threat loomed. The estate could be sold, her mom's memory erased with it. She drove to the lawyer's office, the air thick with the scent of rain and leather as she sat across from him. His desk was a fortress of mahogany, his eyes cold. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice clipped. Your father wanted stability for you. My father wanted control, Sarah shot back, surprising herself. I'm choosing love. The words felt like a weapon, sharp and true. Hargrove's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. She left the office, her pulse racing, the rain soaking her flannel as she ran to her car. For the first time, she felt like she was outrunning her father's shadow. That evening, she found Emma at the lake, the water still under a fading sunset. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, the horizon streaked with pink and gold. Emma stood by the shore, skipping stones, her silhouette strong against the light. Sarah joined her, their shoulders brushing. "I told Hargrove," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I'm not backing down." Emma's grin was like sunlight, and she pulled Sarah into a hug, her arms warm and sure. "That's my girl," she whispered, her breath tickling Sarah's ear. They stood there, the world quiet except for the soft lap of waves and the rustle of leaves. Sarah felt the deadline, 52 days, but it was no longer a cage. It was a challenge, and she was ready. The days blurred, each one a step toward their future. They faced the town together, holding hands at the diner, ignoring the stares, kissing under the fire station's floodlights, daring anyone to say something. The gossip didn't stop, but it lost its edge, dulled by their defiance. Mrs. Callahan helped, slipping Sarah articles about inheritance laws, her quiet support a lifeline. The library became a haven, its shelves a shield against the world. With 30 days left, Sarah and Emma made a plan. They'd marry, not for the will but for them, simple, real, in the town square where everyone could see. The idea terrified Sarah, but Emma's steady presence made it possible. They chose rings at a small shop in the next town, the clerk's smile kind, no judgment in her eyes. The bands were plain silver, warm against their fingers, a promise etched in metal. The wedding day dawned clear, the air crisp with autumn's bite. The town square was alive with color, leaves crunching underfoot, the scent of cider and wood smoke in the air. Sarah wore a white flannel dress, Emma in a tailored suit, her hair swept back. They stood under an oak tree, Mrs. Callahan officiating, her voice steady as she spoke of love and courage. The crowd was small, friends, a few firefighters, no family, but it was enough. Sarah's vows were quiet, raw. "You're my home, Em. I choose you every day." Emma's were fierce, her voice breaking. "I've got you, Sarah. Always." They kissed to cheers, the sound drowning out the whispers. The will's deadline passed, and Hargrove's letter arrived days later. The estate was gone, sold to a developer. Sarah cried, but Emma held her, whispering, "We'll build our own." They did. A small apartment cluttered with books and gear became home. The town softened, not entirely but enough. Sarah kept her job, Emma her shifts, and they carved out a life. Messy, real, theirs. The scent of cedar and coffee, the creak of their couch, the warmth of their hands laced together. It was enough. More than enough.